So in today's video, we're going to talk about guitar tuners. I'm not talking about the tuning machines that are on your headstock. I'm not talking about the fine tuners on your floating trem. What I am talking about is compact portable electronic tuners, kind of like this. So we're going to talk about accuracy. We're going to talk about which ones are good, which ones are complete junk. We're going to talk about why you might need a tuner, even if you think you've got perfect pitch, even if you do have perfect pitch. If you're a complete beginner, brand new to guitar, there's going to be some really good information in this video for you. If you're a gigging musician playing, a couple weekends a month or even more than that, you'll probably find some good stuff in this video as well. So let's jump in. Let's talk about tuners. Electronic tuners weren't always a thing. The original ones were great, big, bulky things that were super expensive. They were fragile, so you really couldn't take them out on the road with you. Your average gigging guitar player couldn't afford one, and if somehow he did manage to scrape together the money to get one, he wouldn't dare take it out on gigs with him. So eventually, electronic tuners did become smaller and relatively more affordable. I won't say they actually became cheap until the last few years, but as soon as they were within my budget, I grabbed one. And I was surprised at the stigma that went along with using an electronic tuner. Most people didn't understand what they were. And I remember we were out on the road, out in Iowa someplace, and I was trying to explain to a guy what a tuner was, what it did.
Hey man,
Hey man, we're getting ready for sound check. What's up?
what's that there, Gizmo?
This thing,
Uh-huh.
it's a guitar tuner, man. Turn this dial, whatever string you want to tune, and when that needle hits zero, that string's in tune. Tune all the strings, your guitar's in tune.
Well, if you're too stupid to tune your own guitar without that, Gizmo, I'll bet your band ain't very good.
Right? That's a true story. Guy wouldn't even stick around and listen to sound check to see if we were any good or not. And to this very day, there are closed-minded, uninformed individuals out there that think using a guitar tuner is a crutch. And I'll just say it plainly, they're wrong. You look on any professional pedal board and you're going to see some sort of a tuner, whether it's a stomp box pedal style tuner or one built into a multi-effects device. You'll see headstock clip-on tuners everywhere. Even acoustic guitars will often come with a built-in tuner. You can get rack mount tuners. You can get tuners that will go into the sound hole on your acoustic guitar if you don't have a built-in one. Little handheld tuners are still a thing. And of course, the clunky strobe tuner is still out there as well. And of course, we don't want to forget the multitude of tuner apps that are available for your smartphone. Well, the first question is, do you need a tuner? The answer is yes. What if you think you've got perfect pitch? What if you do have perfect pitch? Well, you still need a tuner, and I'll get to you guys in a minute and explain why. Then the next question is going to be, well, what kind of tuner is right for me? Well, a lot of that depends on what type of instrument, what type of guitar you play. If you play strictly an acoustic guitar, I would recommend a clip-on headstock tuner or one of the sound hole tuners. You could go with a handheld tuner like this that's got a microphone built into it. That would be fine. Make sure it's chromatic. The problem with a guitar-specific handheld tuner is it only does 6 notes. It does low E, A, D, G, B, and high E. And if you want to do any alternate tunings or you simply want to tune down a half step because your voice is tired, then the guitar-specific tuners are not going to work for you. You'll need a chromatic tuner, which will do any note. Anyway, you're an acoustic player, you've got your chromatic handheld tuner with a built-in microphone. You turn the tuner on, you pluck your first note. Now the display is going to show you several things. It'll show you the name of the note, E flat in this case. It'll show you whether the note is sharp, whether it's flat, or whether it's dead on. One of the disadvantages to the handheld tuner that's got a built-in mic is they're susceptible to noise. So if there's a lot of noise, backstage or in your apartment or wherever, the mic's going to pick that up and it will interfere with the tuning. As an acoustic player, your other choices are a sound hole tuner or a clip-on headstock tuner. The way these work is different from a handheld. The other two styles use a transducer to pick up the vibrations directly from the wood of the guitar. Other than that, they're basically the same. Shows you the name of the note, whether that note is sharp, whether that note is flat, or whether it's dead on. The advantage to a clip-on or a sound hole tuner is that by not having a microphone, background noise is not going to be an issue. So the clip-on tuner is going to have a little bit of an advantage in that it's easier to move from guitar to guitar. So if you have multiple guitars and only one tuner, it's a lot easier to move clip-on tuner around than it is to move the sound hole tuner around. Now, if you're an acoustic electric player, that is to say your acoustic guitar has an output jack where you plug a cable into it, that puts you in the same realm as electric guitar players and electric bass players in terms of choice of tuner style. The choices are pretty broad. There are a ton of different pedal style tuners out there, as well as the rack mount tuners that I mentioned before. You could use a headstock tuner on stage. That would be swell. I would not recommend it though if your stage show looks anything like either of these guys, because your clip-on tuner is not going to stay with you. It's going to end up in the audience somewhere. Having said that, I will admit that if you're on stage and your drummer is pounding his kick drum or your bass player's thumping away, your headstock tuner is going to pick that up and it will interfere with the tuning. Also, if you're backstage and there's somebody on stage and they're using big amps like this, yeah, that will probably interfere with the headstock tuner, and I would recommend going with the pedal style tuner. When somebody decides to buy a pedal tuner and they ask my advice, they almost always ask me one of two questions. They either ask which one is the best, or they ask which one is the most accurate. Those aren't the right questions to be asking. Well, in terms of accuracy, they are also accurate with one possible exception. The average human's not going to be able to tell the difference between one and the other. That's just a fact. So what are the right questions to be asking? That depends on what type of player you are, what your situation is. For me, as a performing musician, there are two really important factors. One is the display. I might be doing an outdoor festival on Saturday afternoon, and I'm in bright sunlight, and I need to be able to read that tuner in the bright sunlight. And then the next night, I might be playing in some drab, shabby, poorly lit roadhouse at night, and I need to be able to see the tuner in that situation as well. So the display is a top priority for me. The second thing for me is how well is it made? Is it going to be reliable? Is it robust and going to stand up to the vigors of being on the road? Constant use and abuse, being stomped on day in and day out, gig after gig after gig. Now, somebody who's playing in a coffee house maybe once a month, they're going to have a different need. If you're playing only in your bedroom or your basement, your needs will probably be different than somebody who's doing a world tour. So let's just go ahead and take a look at some of the pedal tuners that are available out there. So I've pulled up pedal tuners at sweetwater.com and I have them sorted by popularity. And no, this video is not sponsored by Sweetwater. I just shop there a lot. So the first two top selling pedals are both from TC Electronic, the Polytune 3 and the Polytune 3 Mini. The main difference between the Polytune and the Polytune Mini, of course, is the size. Their features are basically the same. As you can see here, this blue pedal, which is in the Mini format, is quite a bit smaller than my Polytune, which is what I would call a standard size format. The other thing that sets the Polytune pedals apart from the rest of the pedals is that it has a unique ability to read all 6 strings at once. You can choose between a single string mode or a 6-string mode. In this shot, they're illustrating the 6-string mode, and you can see that the low E string and the G string are both flat, while your B string is a little bit sharp. Some players might find this really useful. Now we come to the Peterson Strobo Stomp, which they say is an actual strobe tuner in pedal format. Let's talk about strobe tuners for a minute. Strobe tuners have been around the longest out of all the different styles of electronic tuners. They've been around for 70 or 80, maybe even 90 years by now. On a strobe tuner, the display appears to be a series of wheels. And when they're turning clockwise, that means your note is sharp. When they're turning counterclockwise, that means your note is flat. When it doesn't appear to be turning at all, that tells you that your note is right on. So a tabletop or desktop strobe tuner, what I would consider a standard strobe tuner, they're going to run between $1,000, a little over $1,000 actually, all the way up to over $4,000 for a true strobe tuner. For Peterson to get an actual strobe tuner in a pedal format and sell it for 150 bucks, I think is pretty amazing. The Strobo Stomp has got a big display, it's got great features, great specs. It's understandable why it's a top seller. Next up on our list is the Boss TU3. This pedal has been around for a long time and it is on countless professional pedal boards around the world. Like all Boss products, this thing is built like a tank. It's got good specs, good features, and you can't go wrong by putting one of these guys on your pedal board. All right, rather than talking about every single pedal that's on this page, let's talk about one specific one, and then we'll talk some general concepts that apply to all the rest. That specific pedal that I want to address is the Ernie Ball pedal. While technically it is a tuner pedal, what it really is a volume pedal with a tuner built in. I don't own one. I don't know anybody that owns one, so I can't speak from personal experience as to how robust they are or anything along that nature. But it seems like it might be a really good idea for people trying to conserve space on their pedal board by combining two pedals into one. Let's talk about some general concepts that you might want to consider before making your next tuner pedal purchase. Size is going to be a thing. If you decide you want to go with a smaller pedal to conserve pedal board space, keep in mind that these smaller format pedals, such as these, they don't have room for a battery, and so you'd have to have an external power supply to use these. As I mentioned earlier, display size and brightness would also be a factor. If at all possible, try to get your hands on some of these different tuners in real life so that you can see for yourself what they look like and whether or not they appeal to you. The next thing you might want to think about is, do you want a buffered pedal or do you want a true bypass pedal? Some people absolutely insist on having everything on their pedal board be true bypass, and some people understand the benefits of having a buffer. Some of these pedals are true bypass, some are buffered, some of them have better buffers than the others. And even others have the choice between true bypass and buffering. So that's something for you to think about. If you're a bass player, you might want to look at a pedal that has a dedicated bass mode. That might be something to think about. Not all of these do. Some of them that don't have a dedicated bass mode still will work for bass, but that's something you want to investigate before you purchase one. Spending more money is not necessarily going to get you a better tuner. You'll see on this page there's a couple of them that are in the $35 range. I know some people who have the Behringer tuner, and I would say someplace between a third and half of them don't like it. They say that they don't think it's very well made and that it doesn't really tune very accurately. This is the one possible exception that I told you we'd talk about for accuracy. All the other tuners that I've talked about here today are accurate beyond what the average human can hear. Personally, I'd recommend against getting the Behringer. I'd spend another 15 bucks and get this Ibanez tuner. I know a couple guys that have this and they have never had any problems with it. That said, I do know a few guys that have the Behringers who have never had any problems with them. They claim that it tunes just as well as other tuners, so you might find that your mileage may vary. I said we'd talk about tuner apps for your smartphone, and I don't want to talk about individual apps for this. I'll just cover a couple of the more important things. Number one, they have all the same disadvantages as a handheld tuner in that they use a microphone to pick up the note that you're playing. They're very susceptible to background noise, even more so than a handheld tuner. The reason for this is the microphone on the tuner is designed for tuning a guitar, whereas the microphone on your smartphone is designed for conversation. Personally, I would never use a smartphone tuner unless I was backed into a corner and I had no other choice. There's some free ones out there. There's a few that are $2 or $3, some that I think are $5 or $6. I just go ahead and spend the 10 bucks and get one of these Fender clip-on tuners because that's going to do the job much better than what the smartphone app will do. Speaking of clip-on tuners, let's double back to those for just a second. The price range on those is pretty broad. They go from this $10 Fender one, which works just fine, all the way up to 60 bucks for this Korg and this Peterson clip-on tuner. I've used pretty much all of these that are on the Sweetwater page for clip-on tuners, and I haven't had any trouble with any of them. I've seen people online bagging on the Snark saying that it eats batteries, but any of the clip-on tuners will eat batteries if you leave them on all the time. My recommendation is to look and see what kind of battery your clip-on tuner uses, and rather than buy them at Home Depot or Walgreens or wherever and paying $3.50 a piece for them, buy them online. You can get them in bubble packs of 20, and you'll get your cost per battery under $1. And I think that's a smart way to go if you're going to use a clip-on tuner. All right, the last thing I want to talk about is that guy with perfect pitch who says, I don't need a tuner. Tell you what, if you're tuning your guitar in your bedroom or your basement at home and you're by yourself, that's just fine. Go for it. Don't buy a tuner. Tune by ear. However, if you're in a band, you need a tuner. And I'll tell you why. So we're going to take two bands that in every facet except one are basically the same. They've got the same musicianship, they've got the same showmanship, same light show, blah, blah, blah. The one difference is our first band has a guy named Jeremy with perfect pitch. Let's listen to them for just a few seconds.
Thank you. Thank you. We're called Buzzkill.
Hey, Jeremy, give me a G. Did you notice anything? Did you find anything annoying? I know I certainly did. Now let's listen to our second band, where everybody who plays guitar or bass is using a pedal tuner. Hey, thank you. We're called the Clark Colborne Band. And I gotta tell you, we are thrilled to be here with you guys tonight. This next song's off our latest album called Obscurotica. This tune's called Stargazy Eyes. All right, yeah, I snuck a shameless plug for my own band in there, but that is truly how we do it. Our tuning on stage is silent, and that's the way it should be. Please don't subject your audience to listening to you guys tune. Bad form. So that's one of the big advantages to a pedal tuner is it silences your guitar signal on stage. Not only does your audience not have to listen to you tune, you can use that when you're switching guitars. If you're going from your 6-string to your 7-string or your 7-string to your 12-string or your baritone or whatever, you can unplug your cord or your wireless and not make any potentially speaker damaging noises. Just step on that tuner pedal, your signal chain is quiet, swap out your guitar, step on the pedal, after you check your tune real quick, of course, and away you go. All right, that's it for this video. I hope you found some good information and something that can help you out in your tuner selection. I did do another video about the accuracy of tuners because that debate drives me crazy, and you might find that to be somewhat entertaining as well. I'll put a link in the description, and maybe I'll put a box up in the corner like the real YouTubers do. If you did find anything useful in this video or entertaining, do me a big favor and hit the thumbs up, give it a like, because that helps me out a bunch. And if you really liked what you saw, go ahead and subscribe, hit the bell notification, and we will see you in the next video. Until then, live well and rock hard.